Welcome, everybody. So good to see you guys. Welcome, welcome. It's always such a pleasure having these gatherings on Wednesday. I always look forward to this. You like my new haircut? Ah,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
I love that picture of you with a flower.
Thank you.
It is fun, 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 fun to play with what I've got to play with, which is pretty much just my hair. I don't really do my nails anymore. I don't do that kind of thing, and I don't inject stuff in my body. I don't color my hair. I don't do Botox. I don't do lifts and tucks and whatever else. So getting haircuts, that's like the fun thing that I get to do. It's body val.
Same, same. No, I still do nails
Uh,
like 32.
every now and again, I'll go do that, but I don't like to be a slave to a regiment because you got to keep them going. I love being a free being. So, anyways, I'm sure you can hear a little bit my hoarse voice. I've got a sweet little family. Everybody has a little bit of a cold, and Grandma got it too. So it's all good. Just strengthening my immunity.
Me too, Laina. Interesting.
Yeah, well, we're going through some big changes. We're going through some massive, uh, energetic changes and opportunity. I'm going to say opportunities for change. But today is episode 226 of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. Hello, beautiful sister. Thanks for joining us. And today is what is today? It is December the 17th. Oh my gosh, the year is going by fast, fast, fast. Hello, sweet Paula. Good to have you join us. All right, let's just jump right in. Last week, I was guided to share information from chapter 24. And if you're new to this channel, I focus on A Course in Miracles. I started reading the course. Um, it was 2011 because 2012 was the first year that I went every day and did my lessons almost every day. Like everybody, I've missed a few. Um, and anyhow, so I've been a student of the course for about 13 years. And I have been a student of truth for almost 25. In 2002 is when I began to question things. I began to really realize there's got to be another way. So that journey led me up until 2007 when I had an encounter with the divine that absolutely altered my life in a beautiful way. It was as if that encounter put in my path a fork in the road that I just could not miss. And where I was going this direction, that encounter said, "Nope, you're going to go this direction." Because then I began to hear this with a very clear knowing. Not only are you going to receive a course called The Power of Awareness, but you're going to teach it because you need to learn it. And it was like, what? I'm going to teach a course? I don't know. I've never taught anything other than, I used to be a realtor and I would put on some classes about real estate stuff. I don't know. I've never been a teacher. And awareness. What the heck do I know about awareness? Well, I was being put through the course myself, guided by what I know was the consciousness of Jesus, of Jeshua. And I was guided in how to teach what I was learning. And then I was told you're going to open up a center, and it's going to be called a Center for Awareness. All my work is all about awareness. And that's why this year I decided, since I've moved from where I used to live in Georgia, where I had the Center for Awareness, which, I did close it a little while back, but I kept the community going and I used different venues to teach my classes, my courses. And then when I moved to a different state, I knew, okay, well, I'm gonna have to do something virtual. So I opened up the Awareness Academy, which is an online community for people who are on various levels of their journey, as well as you know, financially, wherever you are, I want to meet you there. So if you can contribute, we love that. If you cannot contribute and you want to just take advantage of everything that I do for free, I love that too, because I love teaching. Who knew? Never knew I was going to become a teacher, but here I am teaching and I love it. And you know why I love it? Because it comes through me. I get to be the recipient of the joy of generously sharing information. My YouTube channel has over 1,000 videos. You can find information for years that I've been sharing right there in that channel. And of course, in the academy, there's a lot more. I think now we're well over 100 classes that we've been teaching in just a few months. And like I said, depending on what feels comfortable to your pocketbook, then you can access whatever, however much you want. And so today we are going to talk about the same, not lesson, but a chapter in the text that we talked about last week. And I'm going to tell you why it's so important that you understand this. So last week we started in the introduction in chapter 24. The title of that chapter is The Goal of Specialness. We just read the introduction. I'm going to share a few little highlights about the introduction because we're going to dive in and go as far as we can into this particular section. The reason we have got to understand the meaning of this section is because most people don't understand what the ego is all about. I had no idea until I began to become self-aware, which is why I became empowered through the awareness that I was gaining. The world is at the point that I was when I had my encounter with the divine. We are at a crossroads, not a crossroads, we're a fork in the road because it's going to go in two totally different locations. And it's not really locations per se, it's two different levels of consciousness. Humanity has to make a decision. We have been coexisting, although through a lot of suffering, we have been coexisting with this idea that good and bad exist in the same place, that good and evil are just part of the world, that right and wrong is normal, that having a choice between being a good person or a bad person somehow, that's somehow acceptable. And then we judge people based on the choices that they've made. That coexisting of, I'll call it just good and evil for now, dark and light for now, that coexistence is coming to a completion. And the reason we are coexisting with that, tolerating it way, way too much, is because we are being invited to make a choice. Now, the choice has already been made. And this is where people are going to have to really understand, comprehend what I'm saying at a very deep level. The choice was made, has already been made based on what you have been choosing to believe is true about you. Now, here's why it's so important to understand that we are at this fork in the road where we have to make a conscious choice. We have been making an unconscious choice since the moment that we are born. We are being given information, and most of it is not true, especially that God is outside of us and that we have to go through a church to get to God. And when you widen back and look at the bigger picture, you see that we have all these different religions, and all of them have a different path, and all of them do things differently. They have different ways that they celebrate. They have different dates that they celebrate. They have different things that they say are the laws, or what is acceptable or not acceptable. When you widen back and you come to the place of recognition, as most of the planet pretty much, for the most part, I would say, if not 95%, maybe even more, of the planet believes in monotheism. That means we have one God. Thousands of years ago, maybe not even that long ago, we thought that there were 10, 20, 30 gods. We had the God of the moon and the God of the sun and the God of rain and the God of soil and the God of this and the God of that, the God of fertility. So we went from all those different gods, which was at a more immature understanding in the development of humanity, to maturing a little bit more to that we have one God. but we are still immature in that we believe to get to that God, there are different religions. And it wouldn't be an issue. Actually, we would be a lot more mature if we accepted that all of those religions is just different ways of getting to God. But where we fail and where we are still immature is that when you're in that religion, you think that one is the right one and the other ones are wrong. So it doesn't give permission to the other ones to have their own way of getting to the one God. What is happening now is that so many, and deliberately, purposefully, in a good way, have been disenchanted with religion, as I was growing up Catholic. I just had nothing but fear of God. I wanted nothing to do with God because God was very much like my father, a fickle kind of a person who was only happy with me if I behaved a certain way, and then it was unhappy with me if I did something else. So I wanted nothing to do with another father figure when I already had my own father figure that I didn't wasn't close to. So we are in at a time right now where those who have been disenchanted with religion and and those who are becoming enchanted with Christianity, and I say that in a really well, I'll explain why. Those who are moving back into Christianity because not so much because they're trying to find God, well, although that will be an outcome. They're realizing that the teachings of Jesus 2,000 years ago were very powerful. If we just practice the simple laws that Jesus gave us two laws. Really, it's one, but he broke it up in two because we needed to make it even simpler for us to understand. He said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Now, to really understand what that means is to love your neighbor, you have already had to have come to love yourself. So you're going to love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to have love for the neighbor. So let me put that one aside. The other one he said is, and love God with all your heart. So those two really go together because you cannot come to love yourself until you come to understand what God is and have a relationship with God within you because that is where God is. This is why religion that put God out there somewhere and put the middle people, the whether it's the Pope or the rabbis or whoever, or the Archbishop or the Imam or whoever, to get to God, they have put a barrier for us. Now, I'm going to be jumping back and forth between how we got into this situation and what we need to do now to get out of this situation. So, we got into this situation because when we were born, we didn't have the maturity, and our parents didn't have the maturity when they were born, and their parents didn't have the maturity when they were born to question what was being taught. So, all of us have been indoctrinated into beliefs that are not true about what God is and where God is. Some of us have received factual information. Hooray, that's wonderful. But the bulk of humanity has not. And because we have been conditioned that God is out there and we got to go through this middle person to get to God, well, most of humanity went to that middle person on Sundays, on, Wednesday nights, or whenever people go to temples or mosques, or I'm not familiar with those religions, so I can't tell you. But I'll tell you, in the Christian religion, you pretty much win Sundays and Wednesdays. So you go there, and then of course, conveniently, you have to pay your 10% because, well, you got to pay your way into heaven. That's just the way that it is in a third dimensional world. So what has happened is all of us who have been indoctrinated with misinformation, we grow up, we become adults, and we think, we know it all. And we go about either defending our religion based on, okay, this is the true religion. But the reason we defend that religion is because within us there is an ego. The ego is what the course to me has been brilliantly teaching me to become aware of so that I could do what I have been doing, what so many people are attempting to do, to become self-aware first so that I could awaken as the natural next step. So we have this where we have been indoctrinated, and this is the way it's been. So the world today, so much, not so much of it, all of it is as messed up as it is. And now that's not a judgment. It's an observation of a fact. And the reason it's not a judgment is because when you come to understand that all of this is done by free will, we all have free choice. God gave us a gift called free will. So it's been a beautiful experience. It's been an amazing journey. It's been thousands of years of humans attempting to figure things out on their own. What a cool experiment. Now, what is happening is those who have been becoming self-aware, because self-awareness comes before awakening, and I'll explain that in a second. Becoming self-aware, meaning you begin to recognize, okay, what I'm being taught about God, there's got to be more than that. Most of those people go on what I would call a spiritual journey, begin to study Buddhism, Hinduism, begin to study mystical teachings, move down the path of in America, we've got the Unity movement that started back in the late 1800s, or the Christian Science movement. All ways of expanding your awareness, your consciousness, understanding there is more to life than just what you have been taught. In essence, it's a rebellion against what you had first agreed to participate in while you were a child and didn't know any better. So you begin to get a level of just independence, and in many cases you're going to go against what your family taught you. And of course these are called the black sheeps and the rebels, and that's all right. Put whatever label you want on it. That's all the ego loves to label, because it loves to talk about the differences, and it loves to say this is better, this is lesser, this is higher, this is lower. So that movement that has been going on for quite a while, of we want love, not war, we want peace, not suffering, that movement has been steadily increasing. More and more people, more and more books are available. And the more books, and then of course with the advent of social media and YouTube, lots of information, lots of us have put tons of information available for people to access it. That information that resonates at a higher frequency. And if you understand that chart, the map of consciousness that was given to us by the brilliant Dr. David Hawkins, shows that the level of open-mindedness that you have is what allows you to have a more expanded consciousness, meaning you're going to be operating at a different frequency. Frequency is nothing more than the vibrational expression of your beliefs. So when you're vibrating higher, you're lighter, you're more in love, you're more at peace, you're more in a state of just expansion and joy, and all of those wonderful things. When you vibrate lower, you're contracted, you're in fear, you're suppressed, you're compressed. So you operate either open because you're operating with truth, or you're contracted, closed off, because you're operating with misinformation. And misinformation is very limiting. All right. So we've been indoctrinated. We've had all this information. The fork in the road is you're going to continue that path of believing what others tell you, putting idols ahead of you, having your path to God be a path that goes out. So you got to go find a guru, a middle person, the priest, the pope, the imam, the rabbi, the whatever. You got to go through them because they're the ones who are going to help you find the truth, and then you'll get to God. You can go that path, but that path means that you're choosing. And this is what is so beautiful about understanding the truth of who we are. It's all a choice. Nobody is forced to go down any path that they don't want to go down. Now, I know people are going to say, but what about people who are being human trafficked? They're forced. What about people who are in jail? They're forced to be there. What about people who are locked up and held captive somewhere? They're forced. What about children who go to school because their parents force them to go to that school? Yes, at the 3D level, it appears that we don't have choices. That is why you have to become self-aware. Self-awareness has us understand that we are more than just our ego. We're more than just our human self. Self-awareness has us begin the process of cultivating a relationship with the part of us that is eternal, the part of us that lives on forever, the part of us where our power comes from. This fork, if you choose that fork from a soul level, it appears that you don't have choices, that you just have to do it. This is the way everybody does it. It'll appear that way because you haven't become open-minded and expanded your awareness, your understanding of who you really are. So you are choosing to remain confined to your egoic identity. Again, you're not aware of that. I get it. I have so much compassion for the me that did not know that. But as you become self-aware because you want to know the truth, and that's it. It's a desire to know the truth because only the truth sets us free. When you begin to know the truth of who you are, you begin to expand your awareness. Now you are free to choose. The choice then becomes, do I cultivate a relationship with the true self, with who I really am as God created me? Well, to have that relationship, then you must understand what is the relationship with the ego, because this is what puts you in this direction. If you want to, jump ship or jump tracks or whatever you want to call it, if you want to change the trajectory of your experience, you have to become aware of the choices before you. And it's very simple. Super, super simple. Come to know God as God is, not as the church tells you, because excuse me, remember the path that humanity has been on is a path of a God that is made in man's image. I mean, it's even made to be like a man. It's on a cloud with a beard. Sometimes he's painted with a scepter, like, King Neptune. Somehow he has been made in the image of man. And when you look at all of these religions, most of them are led by men. Very few allow women in. Some haven't really allowed women until recently. So when you begin to recognize that we have projected onto God, if down this path, we have projected onto God the good and the bad of humanity. It's loving and it's not so loving. What I discovered as I began to do my spiritual awakening, and I began to become more self-aware, is I began to cultivate a relationship with Jesus. I always liked Jesus. I didn't like God, but I liked Jesus. I felt there was something there that was honest. So I began to study, how did religion get created, and how did the Bible get created, and where did fear come from? That was the beginning for me. Yeah, I went in all in. I wanted to know, like, the why is there fear? I wasn't looking for how to get richer or how to get prettier or how to get, taller or more voluptuous or have a better man. That was not my interest. My interest was, why is there fear? Because that's what I wanted to end. I wanted to stop the fear that I was experiencing. So I went down this beautiful journey and came to understand the creation of religion, the purpose of religion, all political, absolutely political. When you take truths that liberate humanity, that bring people to the awareness of who they are, to become empowered, to become clear of who they are as a sovereign being, that religion is about freedom. If you're going to turn it into a religion, it'd be about freedom. It would be to empower everybody to be their true selves. But what religion did was to give us all these laws that we had to operate in because somehow we were not smart enough to figure things out on our own. So we have to have all these laws. And we were being basically told that we couldn't have that kind of power, especially in Christianity, that only Jesus had that power. And then what did they do to Jesus? Well, they crucified him. So what do most good Christian people have? Fear of being crucified for being powerful. What does that do? It doesn't take a scientist to realize you don't want to be powerful. Because if you're powerful, you're probably going to end up at the same place that Jesus did, crucified or shot or something like that. So we operate with this, if you come to know God, you kind of keep it quiet to yourself. You don't, people who go around recognizing that level of confidence, well, they end up not in a good spot. So when you begin to become self-aware, you begin to realize that you have been lied to your whole life. But again, by choice, we chose to incarnate into a third dimension. And this is key. If you don't acknowledge that you were at choice, you will always remember a victim. You will always remain a victim to circumstances. This journey of awakening is a journey of taking 100% responsibility for who you are and the choices that you make. But you cannot become aware of the choices that are available to you until you become aware of the choices available to you, which is what the Course in Miracles helps us do. So, the path that we are at choice now is to move down a trajectory of co creating heaven on earth, of co creating what the Course in Miracles calls a happy dream. The way that gets co created is by people who know the truth of who they are, and we operate with respect for one another, recognizing that the differences that we have in how we express ourselves are all gifts that come from the sameness that makes us one. The sameness is we're all powerful, we're all infinite, we are all eternal, we're all loving, we're all kind, we're all generous, we're all abundant. When we finally embrace all that makes us the same, then we have love for the differences. But on this trajectory, the 3D trajectory, we have been deliberately conditioned to believe that differences are bad. There's the slave owner, and then there's the enslaved. There's the white person and the black person. There's the rich and there's the poor. There's, this sexual tendency and that one, So we have been divided by religions, by where you live, by so many different things that our focus is protecting ourselves from those differences. You know what that has us do? Never come to understand what makes us the same. We don't stop to ask each other if do we really, what is at the root of everything that we desire? Because if we had that conversation, we all want the same thing. You know what everybody wants? To be left in peace to do the thing that they want to do. At the very least, we all want that. Don't mess with me. Let me be me. We all want that. Why are we not talking about that? Why are we not focusing on what is it that you want to do? Because if we talked about that, we would see how insane it is that we're fighting over differences when we could be focusing on what is the same. We could be focusing on, and in this country, in the US, even our Constitution spells out what makes us the same, that we're endowed by our Creator with the same inalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all want life. We all want, leave me alone, let me live my life. We all want freedom, liberty. Just don't tell me what to do, let me be free. And that is the only way that we're going to experience our happiness. But you know why people are so angry and mad around the world? Because we're being told that you have to like this group. If you don't like that group, then that means that you're a racist or a misogynist or a sexist or any kind of label that you want to put on it. You know who created all that? The ego. The ego is the one who has made all of these ways of judging one another somehow seem normal. Well, they become normal, but they're not natural. So this path is a deliberate choice to come to know where we are the same. And that requires that we become open-minded. It requires us to begin the process of maturing. When we mature, we stop needing to be right. When we're immature, we have to be very righteous. Why? Because you're defending an idea that you don't even know its origin. You don't even understand it. So immature people defend to the death, in many cases, that which they don't even know what it is. I mean, it's insane, but yet that seems to be normal. But like I said, it's not natural. When you move down the other path, you begin to question things. You begin to question, well, who taught me this? Where did this come from? Who made up the Catholic Church? The course is so clear that every belief system has an origin. And if you want to live by that which is eternal, then you want to know what has been an eternal truth, not just a 200-year-old truth or a 3,000-year-old truth. You want the truth that has been true always and will be true always, no matter who comes and goes. So that requires a level of maturity. You got to be willing to question your own beliefs. If you're being righteous, you won't do that. But if you're being open, if you're being moving into a place of humility, you want to know because you realize there's got to be more than what I possibly could know. This path is the path of where we absolutely acknowledge where we are the same so that then we can celebrate the differences. This path is where we deny where we are the same so that we can battle the differences. We can stay at odds with each other. Crazy, isn't it? But this is what we call normal. So you come to a teaching like A Course in Miracles because you want to become self-aware. A lot of people want to wake up, they want to become enlightened. That's what I wanted at the beginning. I had no idea how to go through self-awareness first. But that's okay. It doesn't matter what entices you to come down this path. You are being guided by something within you that is the truth of who you are, calling you back to yourself. So let me tell you the differences between being aware and being awake. Awareness is recognizing that you have two voices, the voice for God, the voice of ego. Or you can say love or fear, or the voice for the light or the voice for the darkness. That's it. Awareness requires that you know those two aspects of yourself. To be awake is that you choose to only abide by that which is true about you, meaning you're only operating from listening to the voice for God because you become the voice for God. You become the vessel through which God's voice speaks. But for that to happen, for awakening to happen, you need to know what God is. Because we have a lot of people who speak for God in the 3D world that are not awake. But they hit up churches and maybe even the corner of a street and they stand there like they know they're the ones who know the truth about God. Well, here's the thing. Course in Miracles makes it very simple. There are very few things that you need to accept about God to know the real God. Number one, it's eternal. It's absolutely eternal. It's going to be forever, meaning you're going to be forever because you were made in that image. So you've got to cultivate a relationship with a part of you that's eternal and begin to lessen and diminish the attachment to the temporary aspect of yourself. That number one is a body. And number two is all the material stuff that we have, all what the world thinks about us. You have to not have an attachment to those things. Doesn't mean you don't have those things because you're going to have a body, but you cannot have an attachment to that, meaning you cannot believe that that's where your power comes from. Your power has to come from the unseen but felt eternal aspect of who you are. Because when you start cultivating that relationship with your eternal self, with God, you're really beginning to feel God where God is, which is within you. And as you begin to feel God within you, it won't take long before you begin to understand the other aspects of the God, the truth about God. It's not only is it eternal, but it is infinite in possibilities and potential. Look at all that has been created, and you have to stop in awe. Wow, so much diversity, not just in people, in planets, in flowers, in so much, in animals, so much diversity. So you have to acknowledge that's infinite potential. Here, all of us have been indoctrinated into, you pick one career, you get married to one person, you have one job, you do one thing, it's very limited, very limited. When you begin to access the truth of God, because you begin to feel it within you and you feel yourself one with all, because you recognize God is in everything. If it isn't, then it's going to have a death experience. That's what happens when bodies die. What do you think happens? You think the body just dies? The essence of who they are exits. The essence is not there. We've seen bodies, they can sit there for a couple of days intact, but it's not animated. Why is it not animated? Because the essence that animates it is not in there. So we're cultivating a relationship with the essence that animates it, not with the body. Then what else do you discover? Because it's one with all that is. It loves all that is. It has no issues with anything. That's why it's peace. It's not at odds with anything that it has created. Humans, on the other hand, you look at the 3D world, everybody's at odds with each other. Interesting, isn't that interesting? We may not have to carry guns and be battling one another on the battlefield, out there in wars and signing up for military, but we're at odds with our neighbors, with our friends, with our family. We're at odds in our own mind. That's the biggest battleground is in our own mind. So becoming self-aware, you need to know, okay, is this the voice for the ego or is this the voice for God? The voice for God is very, very still. It's not a booming, commanding, scare you kind of a voice. It's very peaceful. It's very clear. It's very certain. It knows what it knows and it doesn't need to defend it. Either you silence the ego so you can hear it, or you can't hear it because you're being totally entertained by your egoic mind. That is the work that takes for many lifetimes of quieting, of getting still, of being willing to spend the time to hear that still, quiet voice that is within. Those who are going to move into the co creation of the new earth are going to be doing so because the mindset has been clearly set on the recognition that we want to do for others what we want done for ourselves. We are going to treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated because we have learned to love ourselves enough to know that we deserve better. And that is going to be a big, big piece of choosing to move down the path of getting to know God or staying with the ego. What is your level of self-love? If you're listening to the ego, you self-loathe. You don't love yourself. You think you love yourself because, you maybe take yourself out for dinner or beers or go to the parties or go to the concerts, or maybe you work really hard so you can have a nice vacation. You think you love yourself because you do those things, or maybe you set up your garage with your woodworking shop because you love those things. We do all kinds of things that are very fun. But that's not self-love. Not to what self-love means. Self-love means I love myself so much that I don't want to live a lie. To love yourself is to want to know who you really are. You want to know the truth of who you are. And to know the truth of who you are is to know that you are an aspect of God expressing itself uniquely as you. You don't have to defend yourself to anybody, but you're not better than anybody and you're not lesser than anybody. So you have to cultivate a level of recognition of who you are as an equal with all that is, not just the people, but the trees and the animals, everything. You're one with everything. All has value. Do you know what happens when people begin to recognize the truth of who they are and they afford that same level of value to their environment? You don't pollute. You don't, whatever you do it with reverence. If you're going to garden, you do it with reverence. You take care of the soil. You don't fill it up with poisons. You don't hurt the air. You don't do things to deliberately hurt anything, meaning you operate in a state of grace. Can you imagine billions of people operating in a state of grace, really respecting everything? That's what the course calls a happy dream. But you have to make that choice. You can't continue to operate in the egoic run world that has no grace. Everything is based on greed because to the ego, the two most important things are money and power. And if it gets power and it has money, whoa, you know what has happened. You can see the world right now. Pollution, air, water, food, everything, minds. Minds are polluted from a very young age with misinformation. Started thousands of years with indoctrination into religion that was based, for government purposes to control the masses. Because if you keep people from knowing who they really are, they will worship whoever gives them a tiny little bit of protection because the ego is the belief that I'm separate from God. And if you believe you're separate from God and you don't know who you are, you don't know how powerful you are, you're always going to think that you are weak. So that's why you need power so you can become somebody. And then, of course, you become somebody. Nothing here runs without money. Then you need to have the money. So the mind is so indoctrinated into satisfying all of these lies. And it doesn't matter who it hurts because the ego is selfish. It's all about protecting me. This path, the more conscious path, the operating from a fifth dimensional consciousness, is a very, very, it's beautiful. I was just interviewed by a friend recently. Her name is Lorelei. And she asked me, what about awakening is fun? And I said to her, nothing. Nothing about awakening is fun. It is a very painful journey. Now, everything about being awake is fun, but you got to get to being awake to have the fun. The journey to awakening is a journey of peeling off the layers of beliefs, and it's so uncomfortable. Think of yourself as a turtle. Every single time you let go of a belief, it's like peeling off your shell with no anesthesia. You got to pull off that belief. For most of us, we go through many, many dark nights of the soul because we have to come to the place where we have to look at the lies that we have agreed to, recognize the consequences of believing those lies, making amends for all of the things that we have done. And you may not be able to make amends with everybody for everything that you have done that has been unloving and has been, deceitful, but you have to make those amends with yourself. You have to recognize those lies. But the beautiful thing about the Course in Miracles, one of the many beautiful things, is once you recognize those lies, we're given a very simple tool. We forgive ourselves for having forgotten the truth. We chose to incarnate in a planet where we would forget. That's it. You chose to forget. Why make yourself wrong for forgetting? You don't. But you got to recognize that when you forget, the consequences of that forgetfulness is what creates the 3D world. And it's predominantly a world of suffering. So then it's so simple. You shift and you lift to a higher frequency. Now you know the truth. What is the difference between aware and awakening? Aware, you become aware of the two choices, the two voices, the two options that create two totally different consequences. This creates the 3D world, this creates a 5D world. Then with that awareness, when you make the choice for only listening to God, for only living as love, for living for the greater good of all, then you're awake. That's it. You're awake when you're not choosing, when you're just being what you are. When you're asleep, you're choosing to be what you're not. So then you got to go through the training. Oh, this is what I'm not. This is what I am. This is what I do, all these courses, all these things. I've simplified it as much as I possibly can into two sides. This is what the ego believes. This is what God believes. Learn that. Do only what God believes. Then you're awake. But you have to do it consistently because that's what honesty is all about. You have to consistently think, talk, walk the truth of who you are. That's where so much of the practice comes in. So, in this section, the goal of specialness, the introduction was simply to let us know that this course is motivated in helping us not only learn about the state of peace that is possible, but to attain it. It is interested in getting us to that goal. It is about helping us understand that peace will be yours because it's God's will for us. It's letting us know we got to learn God's will. We got to understand this loving God. Remember, I didn't want to know God before because it reminded me of my daddy, and I didn't like my daddy. So, if I wanted to come to know God, I needed to get past that childish perception of God. I needed to come in more mature, more curious, more willing to understand. And then it tells us in the second paragraph, it tells us that to learn this course, I'm in the introduction, just highlighting what we talked about last week. To learn this course requires willingness to question every value you hold. You cannot move into an awakened state if you do not question everything you believe and why you believe it. Why does it have value to you? Why do you believe that you're not good enough? Why do you believe that you're better than anybody else? You've got to question every single belief. It tells you right here. You have to. To learn this course requires willingness to question every value that you hold. Not one can be kept hidden and obscure because it's going to jeopardize your learning. Then it tells you in paragraph number or sentence number 3, no belief is neutral. We have to understand our beliefs. In the ego world, everything gets sorted out into positive, negative. What is positive? Why is it positive? Why is it negative? You've got to understand that they're not neutral. Because if you think it's positive, you will do something different. If you think it's negative, you're going to do something different. They have power over you because you have decided that they have power. You got to understand that. Sentence 4 says, everyone has the power to dictate each decision that you make. For a decision is a conclusion based on everything that you believe. So we got to look at the world that we have been operating in. Every decision that I made, every relationship that I was in, why was I in it? Why did I break up? Why did I stay? All of that, you got to question everything because everything shows you what you value. Was I in relationships because I was valuing safety? I was valuing money. I was valuing somebody loving me, somebody making me feel important. You got to become honest about what it is that you value. People don't want to do that. It's very uncomfortable to get to the truth of why we are. And I'll tell you, most people are in relationships because they're looking for safety and to not be alone, not really to extend their love because the ego tricks us into having somebody else make us feel safe, somebody else complete us. Thank you, Jerry Maguire. And because those things are programmed in our mind, we don't stop to question, am I bringing love here? Am I really loving this person? Am I even loving me? Because that's where it starts. Love your neighbor as yourself. You've already learned to love yourself. And how did you learn to love yourself? Because you began to love God with all your heart. You cannot love God with your heart until you recognize that's where God is. Until then, you're loving God with your head. So that's why it becomes a fickle thing. Or what can I get out of God? So it continues to tell us in the introduction that, you know, that follows, will follow guilt, which is what the ego's world is all about. Guilt and shame and suffering. Yet freedom comes with sinlessness. You've got to recognize that you're a holy being. You made a decision to forget who you are. That doesn't make you sinful, like religion tells you. That means you're quite adventurous. You're quite an adventurous being who went on an adventure. Now you want to go on a different adventure, an adventure that doesn't hurt anybody, especially because you're not hurting yourself anymore. Now you're going to go on an adventure with awareness of who you are. That's what to be awake is. And it tells us at the very end of that introduction paragraph number 2, that your decisions come from your beliefs. Your decisions come from your beliefs. So we have to learn to believe and accept what God says is true. I am love. I am light. I am eternal. I am whole and complete and perfect. I am holy. I am magnificent. I'm creative. I am powerful as God created me. And so is everyone else. That acknowledging the equality of all of us is what has us become more gentle with our brothers and sisters. Begin to see them. Did they fall asleep like I did? If they did, you're going to have compassion for them. You can't judge them because it would be unfair somebody judging you when you didn't even know that you were asleep. Nobody thinks that they're asleep. I had no idea I was asleep until you begin to become self-aware. So, paragraph 1 in section 1, specialness as a substitute for love. This is why this is so important that we understand this. The ego has substituted love for specialness. And you're going to understand what that specialness has cost us. And the world likes to make us, oh, you're the one special person. You're the one. Hi, yeah, yeah. When people tell us, oh, you're the chosen one for the job, you're the chosen one by that man, that woman. Specialness, ego. loves it, eats it up. All right, so paragraph number one in section number one, love is extension. Look at that chart. When we are operating in the truth of who we are extending. That's a spiral. When you look at it from the top, it is expanding. Love means you're giving it away. You can't hold it for yourself. Ego has been a block to love, so we've been withholding all that love inside of us. And we didn't even know we were doing that. But that love that doesn't get recognized within gets turned into hatred. You're going to see this later. That's why we self-loathe. We can't love others because we are self-loathing, because all the energy of love has been turned against us when the ego runs our mind. So love is extension. To withhold the smallest gift is not to know love's purpose. If you withhold, if you break up and you don't love that person anymore, if you walk by and you see a homeless person and you cross the street, ugh, I don't want to be near that person, you're withholding love. If you post something mean about somebody, you're withholding love. If you gossip, you're withholding love. If you lie to yourself, call yourself an idiot, call yourself stupid, call yourself not pretty enough, not handsome enough, you're withholding love. It's that simple. Love offers everything forever. Love offers everything forever. When you understand the truths about God, you understand the truths about yourself. You are one with everything. All of it is creative, always expanding. It is all one. It is all, that's why it loves everything. That's why it's at peace with everything. So love is about extending everything forever. You don't keep anything to yourself because you know, you understand abundance, you understand generosity. Hold back but one belief, one offering, and love is gone because you asked a substitute to take its place. Specialness is that substitute. I need to keep this because I worked for it. I deserve it. It is mine. Grandma gave it to me, so I'm not going to share it with my sister. I'm speaking about my own stuff. You know, sisters, four sisters trying to divide up what was grandmothers or mothers. You know, talk about a lot of withholding of love. I want this. This is mine. She wanted me to have this, not you. Oh, why can't we pass it around? Funny to look back on those things. Sentence five. And now must war, the substitute for peace, come with the one alternative that you can choose for love. There's no alternative for love except for war. Because if you're not extending love, you're withholding it. If you're withholding it, you're feeling anxious. If you're feeling anxious, you're going to want revenge because you're going to feel anger. You're going to want to take it out on somebody. This is the quintessential game of hot potato. It gets uncomfortable, you want to toss it. You start getting uncomfortable, feeling self-loathing and unhappy and angry and hateful. You're gonna want to find somebody to toss it to. You're the reason for my suffering. You're the problem. I blamed all my problems on my daddy. I mean, my goodness, I blamed everything on him because I didn't know that he was one of my greatest teachers to help me find my truth. But I used him, my ego was using him to keep me a victim. Instead of going, whoa, my dad showed me what I don't want to be. What a gift. What do I want to be? Well, I want to be a more present person instead of somebody who was drunk and unavailable like he was. What a gift. He just showed me the contrast. I didn't know that. Why? Because I was being programmed with beliefs by my mother and my grandmother that, your dad is good for nothing. You can't count on men. So what was I receiving? The information that filled up my ego's belief system that had me think that I was special and he was not. I was special better than him. So guess what attitude I had when I went out into the world? I'm special better than men or anybody else. I was very competitive in the workspace because I had to be the better one. I had to prove everybody how good I was. Do you know how much energy I spent proving myself all the time? Ay, ay, ay. Now, looking back, it helped me accumulate all kinds of human, wonderful things. I had a very luxurious life. Whoopee. But I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who my dad was. A soul who volunteered to play a part so that I could learn that we all show up and do things differently, but we're all at the core the same. My dad wanted just as much love as I wanted from him. But did I honor the part of me that said I really want to be connected to my daddy? Or did I honor the voice in me that was telling me stay away? Same thing happened with God. There was a part of me that wanted connection with that which is the creator, but then there's the voice in me going, nope, I don't want anything to do with that bearded creature in the sky. So what happened? I had two voices, but I didn't know how to pick the one that was going to give me what I really wanted deep down inside. So I listened to the voice that caused me all of my suffering. You see how simple this is? We've always had the two voices, we just were not aware. That's why awareness comes first. Aware of those two voices, and then you begin to understand, oh, wow, the voice for the ego blocks love with a substitution for war. Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that make sense? If you're not loving and extending and including everybody, you are blocking it and excluding. Simple. That's the only way it goes. So, sentence number 6 in paragraph 1 still says, your choosing it has given it all the reality it seems to have. Our choosing war has given it all the reality it seems to have. We seem to think it's okay to go to war. Now, there is a time while we are shifting from the ego to God that we are going to experience a level of war because we're going to have to override our ego. That's going to feel like war inside of yourself. Thinking I'm not good enough, and then there's a voice saying, yeah, but you really are. It's going to feel like at war. But, how can I be good enough? Look at what happened to me. That victim is going to kick in, and you're going to justify why life has sucked for you. You're going to have to do war with that voice because basically the war with that voice is to tell that voice, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. And so it's going to feel kind of like war with your own voice. But really, what you're doing is you're recognizing that you have two voices. And you know what? In the outer world, we're going to have to do the same thing. As within, so without. We may have to go to war with those who are seeking to hurt humanity, but we're going to understand that we don't need to be going to war and have a world that has been set up with militaries to attack each other, just the ways that we've been doing military in the past. Much of it was not to attack our enemy; it was really to go in there and take over others lands and others riches and cultures. That was all done selfishly. Why? Because the ego is greedy and it wants money and power. Once you understand that ego is about money and power, everything begins to change because then you begin to see what the ego values. Paragraph number 2 says beliefs will never openly attack each other because conflicting outcomes are impossible. This means that if you think you're a victim, if you're operating with that victim mentality, you're not good enough, you're not capable, you're not talented enough, people don't invite you to things, you're never picked. Your beliefs, your ego's not going to be at odds with itself. It's not going to say, no, no, they're going to like us this time. Your ego is going to make you work hard to be liked. Your ego is going to do things to make sure that you get what will satisfy that voice inside of you, including making sure that you push everybody away so you can really say, see, I am a victim. Nobody wants me. Again, I'm using my own examples because the ego is not going to have an opposing outcome. If you believe that you're special, not good, if you're a special victim, you're going to have the validation of that world because it's a frequency that attracts more to you. When you understand that frequency is what attracts experiences, and you understand that beliefs set the frequency, you're going to start paying attention to your beliefs. But you until you become self-aware that your thoughts create your reality because they set the frequency that attracts, you're not going to be able to change those patterns. This is why people do the same thing, expecting different results. Sentence number 2 says, but an unrecognized belief is a decision to war in secret, where the results of conflict are kept unknown and never brought to reason to be considered sensible or not. I had no idea that I could bring into my conscious awareness the beliefs that had me create my patterns of suffering. Never was I going to question my own beliefs. Why? Because the ego wars in secret. Those thoughts kept me in conflict with myself and with others in secret. I didn't know that they were there, but they were there. The evidence was all around. All I had to do was look at my life and my relationships. Yes, a lot of things looked wonderful, but there were a lot of things that were not. And but I wasn't going to look at what wasn't working. It was always their fault. But in secret, I was the victim. Look what they did to me. I was believing lies, not honoring, oh, I'm a powerful creator. Look at what I created. And then go and apologize and begin the process of forgiveness. In the true forgiveness, forgive me, I didn't realize what I was doing. Sentence 3 says, and many senseless outcomes have been reached, and meaningless decisions have been made and kept hidden to become beliefs now given power to direct all subsequent decisions. This, as within, so without. Humanity has been, we have idolized people that we have put in positions of power. And here's the funny thing, some we didn't put in positions of power. If you begin to look at the system is rigged for a very, very small group of controllers who know that our minds are easily deceived. Because if you understood the way politics work, which I didn't before, I thought you really had two parties. And then I began to realize that we really had one party, the uniparty, that gave us two candidates to pick from. That's why things haven't changed too much, because we think we get this party and they're going to do these things, but yet they don't. And then the next party promises this, and then they don't. And then all of a sudden, you begin to realize, well, wait a second. How come only a few benefit, but not the general public? Why? Because the ego is selfish. And it's going to make sure that everything it says sounds good. But what it does, this is why, honesty is so important when you begin to become self-aware. What you think, what you say, what you do have to match. That has not been the case in the past. But because we're so used to focus on differences, oh, the red hat or the blue hat or the white hat or the black hat or whatever, we're focused on differences, not really questioning the beliefs that are held and the outcomes of those beliefs. And the ego doesn't want to acknowledge, oh, I chose the group that created these things that are hurting us. It doesn't want to do that. You can just look at politics today. So much of it is blaming the other side for what the previous side didn't do. But we're going to blame the one that comes in, or we're going to blame the past one. Nobody likes to take responsibility. Why? Because the game of awakening is a game of responsibility. You have to take responsibility. So, sentence number 4 says, let me read it again. Mistake you not the power of these hidden warriors, hidden belief systems to disrupt your peace. If you're judging the other group, you're angry at the other group, you're angry at yourself, you're not going to be at peace. This is why you're at war within. For it is their mercy while you decide to leave it there. That's what the ego loves. That war, that pain, that suffering, so that I can feel like, oh, see, it's not my fault. They did it to me. I would not have had to been so mean to her if she had not said this. I would not have been had to be so, whatever with them and so stern if they had not done this. Sentence 6, the secret enemies of peace, your least decision to choose attack instead of love. That's the secret enemy to peace, is that decisions that we make to attack instead of to love, unrecognized and swift to challenge you to combat and to violence, far more inclusive than you think, are there by your election. Man, those secret enemies to your peace are there because you're choosing to have them there. I say this a lot to my clients that I coach, um, and also in the academy and classes that I have. When I used to, in the beginning of my coaching, I coached a lot of people who were brand new on their journey because I was still brand new in my journey, like attracts like. And it was amazing, amazing to watch. Newer people in the journey are so good about justifying their discomfort. Well, but this is bad because of this. But yeah, I can't help myself. I have no motivation, but I can't help myself. The ego is always defending its position. It's fascinating. Now, I only coach people who are a lot more advanced on their journey. They're not there to pussyfoot around the ego. They're there because they're on a mission to not listen to the ego. They are committed to listening to the voice for God, and they're going to do whatever it takes to free themselves. So they're not justifying their dysfunction. They're not there to try and convince me of why they are a victim or why they should have bullied somebody. They're there to say, help me see, why did I do that? Let's get to the root of it. Very, very different. Justifying for our egoic dysfunctions is a game. And the ego plays that, but you have to become more aware of conscious of the ego. Well, the ego's not conscious, so that was a silly thing to say, but you have to become more aware of what your ego is attempting to do. Sentence 7, do not deny their presence nor their terrible results. All that can be denied is their reality, but not their outcome. This is such an important statement. We need to stop giving the ego power. We need to deny its reality. We need to recognize that anybody's attempt to make you scared, you don't have to believe it. Anybody's attempt to make you feel special, better, lesser, you don't have to accept that. But do not deny their outcome. The 3D world is a world of suffering. Don't deny that that is what is happening here. But you have to make the conscious decision. Do you want to continue to play that game? Because if you are, then you're validating the reality of the ego. You're saying, yeah, that's the way it is. This is where, some you win some, you lose some. Some people, are going to be the 1%, and the rest are going to not be the 1%. If you say that that is real, then the consequences of that will become the reality that you will experience because you are choosing. Remember, God gave you free will. You are choosing to agree with the very thing that you say you don't like. If you agree with that, but it is the way that it is, oh, somebody hurt me, somebody raped me, somebody beat me, somebody robbed me. Well, that's why I'm the way that I am. Then you are saying that you agree with that being your reality. You're not willing to question your beliefs. If you question your beliefs, you would start with something very simple like, does it have to be so? Does it have to continue to be true? What if I was a victim till I'm not? What if I operated in a state of seeing others as more powerful until I don't? Very, very important thing to recognize. You don't have to believe a single thing that you're believing. You don't. But your ego is going to put up a fit if you begin to state to yourself, maybe I was wrong. Maybe that was incorrect. That's the process that begins to humble us into the recognition that I have been operating with my wrong mind. Not to blame yourself, because it was a choice, you have free will, but to take responsibility for finding out, well, if that's the wrong mind, then what's the right mind? If I've been operating from based on the values of the ego, well, what are my other options? And this is when you begin to become open-minded. You begin to expand your awareness. You begin to understand that there are other ways of looking at things. There is another way, and it is the way of God, the true God, not the God of religion, but the God of your own personal experience. This is why you will not find a religion that will ever be built around the Course in Miracles, although some people kind of act that way. But you cannot turn it into a religion because it is a personal self-study course for you to find out the truth of who you are, the self that you are as God created you. And when you come to know your perfection, your goodness, your holiness, you will have to acknowledge everybody else's. If you don't, you're not awake. You're still awakening, but you're not awake. One who is awake walks upon this planet like Jesus, sees no enemies, but recognizes he's not denying the outcome of what the ego had done at the time that he walked upon this planet. He let them know everything that the rabbis were teaching, that was not the truth. They were talking about a God with 6, 7, 800 laws, and Jesus was saying that that's not the truth. That was not convenient for the Jewish establishment at that time. They didn't want somebody walking around saying, you don't have to be afraid of God. When the rabbis and the Pharisees and all these people, they wanted you afraid so you would pay your taxes and you would let them be the ones who were in charge. They ruled through fear. Why? Because fear is how they operated. They were in fear. And you know what their biggest fears are? And this is what's happening in the world today because it's the same. Always going to be the same. Those who operate by fear, controlling others, are the most fearful that those who they control will discover that they're being controlled with a lie. And if humanity today would stop believing the lie of picking sides and we would unite in the truth of who we are, we have been comfortably indoctrinated to believing that the 1% have the power, the 99 don't. Just let's utilize some logic here. Let's just use simple numbers. Let's use the number of a million. 1% of a million versus 99% of a million. Which one has more numbers? It's pretty simple. If the 99% decided, I'm not going to be afraid of the 1%, use even simpler numbers. Let's use 100. 99 people against one. Who do you think is more afraid? The one is more afraid that the 99% is going to stop being afraid of the 1%. When humanity comes together, when we decide that we don't want to continue to hate on each other, but you're not going to come to that place until you're willing to recognize that maybe we all want the same thing. At least the 99% do. And so does the 1%. They really want love and peace, but they find it because they're psychopaths. It's like a game to keep the 99% angry and at odds with each other, warring with each other. But when we come to know the truth of who we are, the world is going to be shifting dramatically. And guess what? A lot of the 99% are waking up. That's why the next couple of years are going to be really radical because they're going to expose a lot of the beliefs that have been used. Very dark beliefs, very dark things have been done that have produced outcomes that have facilitated a lot of the suffering. We're learning about it now. We're learning that the medical establishment, the pharmaceutical establishment has deliberately been poisoning people. We're learning that the agricultural establishment has been deliberately poisoning people. When you put chemicals that kills everything in the ground, as we're discovering that our air has been deliberately poisoned when they put those chemtrails out there. What the stuff that's falling from the sky is not love and light. It's heavy toxins, microplastics, things that do not ever dissolve. When we begin to open up our eyes and realize that those who have risen to position, not all, but many positions of power, and they have money, they're playing a game. And the rest of humanity are the pawns of that game. When you decide to become self-aware, you basically decide to stop being a pawn in somebody else's game, and you begin to understand who are you as God created you. You were created for greatness, but you also have free will to play up and be a pawn in somebody else's game. Humanity is waking up. That's why the systems are crumbling. That's why the world is right now in an uproar about the decisions that have been made that have wreaked havoc upon humanity. As it says in here, last sentence that I read, sentence number 8 in paragraph number 2, all that can be denied is their reality, but not their outcome. Look at the outcome of the world of instability. That is what we need to look at and ask ourselves. Do we want more of that? If you don't want more of that, then stop voting and electing to participate in the same thing that gives you more of the same of what you say you don't want. That takes responsibility. We need to become conscious citizens of this planet, but it all starts coming to know who you really are as God created you. And to know the truth of who you are as God created you, you've got to know the true God. You cannot go by the God that has been indoctrinated into all of us when we were unconscious to recognizing that we were given hand-me-down beliefs that are not true. Very, very big, big ways that we have been manipulated are coming into the foreground. And people are fighting with each other because, this one wears this color shirt and that one wears that color shirt. Petty things that the human ego keeps us immature. It keeps us fighting because we're immature. A mature person says, I'm not going to hate anybody. I'm not. I am not going to continue to be mad or angry with anybody. I'm going to find out why. Why am I mad with this person? And do the research, and you're going to find out that it's all programmed. Who we are naturally is loving. And that is what's so exciting about the Course in Miracles. It is teaching us, if you're interested in learning, the truth of who you are so that you will stop feeding the ego's goals for divisiveness and specialness and just operating and angry and oh my gosh and all that suffering. I am so grateful that you're here. And if you like the way that I teach, if you like to want to know more about the Course in Miracles, join us in the Awareness Academy. I'm getting ready to launch a new program for next year. We're going to spend the whole year becoming very deliberate about looking at our egos, but you're going to have to be actively involved because all of the conversation is going to be inside of our news feed. I'm going to post questions to help people become more actively self-aware. I don't care how advanced you are, that daily practice, I know it for me, that daily practice of questioning my beliefs is so powerful. And one of the things that I'm super committed to doing is helping those who have gotten their ego all spiritualized to really see that the spiritual ego is no different than the ego. It just knows spiritual stuff, but it still judges. It still separates, but it's doing it from spiritual places. So come join the Academy, the Awareness Academy. I've got a link inside of the description for this video. I'll post this video probably tomorrow on YouTube. Join the Academy. Like I said, I've got 3 levels. One is totally free, one's 44, one's 111. You can get as much as you want based on your income level or based just on your personal desires. So I'm offering all that I can. I'm also going to start doing some shift and lift monthly classes to teach people how to utilize the simple tool of recognizing fear and love and knowing how to choose between the two. It's not as simple as just love and fear. You got to understand that there's a method by which the ego keeps us using special love as a way of thinking it's more spiritual. Anyways, that's my passion. I love sharing what I know. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. If anybody wants to unmute yourself and share if you got something out of this, if not, that's okay. I love it. If you watch this video, leave your comments. I love reading them. It's just so joyful to know that people are being touched and feel value in what is being shared here. That's the whole point of it. All right, everybody. Love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.